From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way. From off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk that. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Feels like we were just here recently, and we were. The San Francisco 49ers now signed All-Pro Fred Warner to a contract extension. And what did we talk about coming into this offseason? We were all looking for George Kittle contract extension, a Brock Purdy contract extension, and then a Fred Warner contract extension. That was going to be the trifecta of contract extensions. That was going to put the 49ers into having a really good offseason with some key veterans. And guess what? The San Francisco 49ers have done it. They have signed Fred Warner to a 3-year, $63 million contract extension. The deal includes $56.7 million guaranteed, and that will keep Fred Warner with the team through 2029 and makes him the NFL's highest paid linebacker, which he absolutely deserves to be. So the 49ers working it, getting it done, doing what they should. And what's up to everyone that's in chat? Josh says, great news. It is. I mean, this is the great news that you're looking for. Monkey Boy says all pro Fred. It's exactly what we needed to happen. Everyone hitting the hashtag TCCs. Appreciate that, Josh, Randy. Josh saying mixed with getting Demo done earlier, right? You could add a fourth guy to that list, getting it done earlier. And thanks so much, Randy, for being in the chat as well. So this deal comes with the 49ers and Fred Warner still having 2 years remaining on his current contract. And that a lot of people thought that this was going to be a restructure because of the cap hit that Warner was set to carry in 2025 and 2026, which was the remaining parts of the contract. Of course, he had no guaranteed money or very little guaranteed money left on the deal, but he was going to carry a $29.2 million cap hit in 2025 and a $26.7 million cap hit in 2026. His annual salary right now is at $21 million over the life of the extension. So you can see there's a little bit of a savings there for the San Francisco 49ers. But Fred Warner gets guaranteed money. He gets money up front. This is another win-win situation for the 49ers and for Fred Warner. And that's exactly what the 49ers are in business in doing right now with contract negotiations and contract extensions. It was a win-win between the 49ers and George Kittle, doing just enough to make him the highest paid tight end in the league, which he deserved. Then with Brock Purdy, getting him enough to satisfy what he needed as a player, but also finding balance to be able to build a team around him that could be a consistent winner. And now with Fred Warner, paying him as the number one linebacker, which he absolutely should be, while still, not breaking the bank. He reset the market on his last contract. He resets the market again, just above Roquan Smith. But I think the way that this deal comes down, and we got to give credit to Jennifer Lee Chan. She was the one that put this out there that this deal was near done. She said, hey, it's going to be done within the next 3 days. So I got to give her a lot of credit. It does get done. Jennifer Lee Chan knocked it out of the park on this one. And they needed to get this thing done because it just makes everything kind of work. Me and Mark did a show yesterday, the Red and Bold show, where we talked about the momentum and the 49ers offseason gaining momentum. And this is a big reason why. You get these contracts done, and it builds a positive momentum. Everyone is focused on ball, and that's one of the huge elements to the 49ers offseason this year. That is a difference from the last 2 years. Now, they have spent a lot of money on contract extensions over the last 3 years, whether that was getting Nick Bosa done, which was a huge one that came all the way almost before the first game, or last year getting Ayuk and McCaffrey and Trent Williams all done in the offseason. Well, now they do 3 more big contracts. They are not looking to skimp. They are paying these players a lot of money, but that just proves they have guys who are staples on this team. We just mentioned 7 staple players, and that's not including some of the other guys like Josh brought up in chat, Deommodore Lenoir, who they went and got last year, another staple in that secondary. So they are rewarding players for doing the right things, and I think it's a really good, way to handle business. And now you're going to have everyone there. And, Josh says right here, now let's go find out which of the young guys is going to be a counterpart long-term or his counterpart long-term, right? Nick Martin, D. Winters, Tatum Bethune, some young guys that we can see what Robert Saleh and Johnny Hollins can get out of these guys and put next to Fred. But it's a good thing because you needed to reward Fred for what he's done and what he's going to do. He's 28 years old. He's not to the twilight of his career. Even though linebacker, you don't know how long guys are going to play in today's NFL. Fred Warner is what Field Yates said just recently, a player without weakness, a linebacker without weaknesses. And it's hard to say that about players in general. Everyone has a weakness, but Fred, it seems, doesn't have a noticeable weakness. And of course, there are some things that I'm sure he would love to get better at. He's looking to get better every single day. But how awesome is it for the 49ers that just recently, I mean, since, the early parts of the middle parts of the 2000s, we've had 3 so significant linebackers in San Francisco, from Patrick Willis to Navarro Bowman to Fred Warner. It's been phenomenal to see what they can do. So I'm a huge fan of it. And I want to get deeper into this. And of course, I want to talk about, what everyone's saying in chat. So leave your comments in chat. I think this is going to be a fun conversation. But please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening to this on an audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. And if you are going to bet with Bet Online. It's the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs. And BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With a large selection of odds on everything from MLB, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head on over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. So the 49ers, over just, this part of the offseason, the last 2 weeks, have signed extensions with George Kittle at 4 years, $76.4 million. Brock Purdy, 5 years, $265 million. And Fred Warner, 3 years, $63 million. All those contracts done before May 19th. And thanks, Coach Yak, for posting that on X. And that is the significant part of this, is how the 49ers have been willing to spend money on cornerstones of their franchise. And that's exactly what you want to do. Your quarterback, you get them locked up. The quarterback of your defense, you get them locked up. And then the best tight end in football, you get them locked up. I love the way that they're going about this. And this is exactly what you have to do. You have to go out and you have to secure your players and build around them. And the 49ers are going to build around these pieces all the way through 2030. That's where Brock Purdy's contract goes. Fred Warner's now through the 2029 season. George Kittle, the same sort of thing. They are building in the right direction. And so I really like, what they're doing here. And Chuck says, love their offseason. Just need to hope injuries don't derail the season as it's done in the past. Injuries are always a concern, unless you're Fred Warner, right? He's played 115 of 116 games in his career. He missed one time last year. He got injured in week 4 against the New England Patriots, played the entire season with a fractured leg. This dude is the ultimate Iron Man. If he can be out there, he's going to be. And that's part of the reason I love this contract for Fred. Because if ever there was a person, whether that's player and, and individual, that deserves this, it's Fred. Fred has done everything the right way. The way that he plays, the way that he practices, the way he prepares, the way he presents himself, everything is top of the line. Fred Warner is going to be a day one Hall of Famer. I honestly believe that. This dude is just better than everybody else. He proves it every single day. And he adds an element to your defense that has been tough to find. A 6'3", 230-pound man that can cover in space, that can run sideline to sideline and tackle, but can make plays and can make all the calls. He's phenomenal. So absolutely, I love this. And that's why it was important for the 49ers to make him the highest paid linebacker in the NFL. And so this is what Fred's going to get. It appears his annual salary is going to be $21 million. That is $1 million more than Roquan Smith, who makes $20 million. Tremaine Edmonds at $18 million. Zach Bond, who just got his new contract, he's at $17 million. And then Nick Bolton and Jamian Sherwood, who both signed new contracts this offseason at $15 million. So Fred Warner doesn't just break the bank, but he sets a new level. The same way that you had a new level set with George Kittle once Trey McBride got his deal, you get a new one here. And how about the 49ers approach? And I think this is something important to remember, is they go get this deal done with Fred having 2 years left on his deal. They don't wait for the linebacker market to explode. And this has been one of the criticisms that a lot of people have had, whether that be media or fans alike, of the 49ers front office, has been the way that they've allowed these contracts to go down to the limit, down to the end. They didn't this time. May 19th, they got contracts done with George Kittle and Brock Purdy, but also Fred Warner, who still had 2 years left on his deal. What it also means is they've got this thing completely mapped out over the next 5 years. They know what their money looks like and how they're going to be able to spend, what money is tied up in key pillars of this 49ers roster. They know they got Nick Bosa locked up. They know what his money looks like. They've got Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey locked up. Trent for, a couple more years if he plays that long. Christian McCaffrey for 3 more seasons if he plays that long. Then they get the contract done with Ayuk. That way they know what his contract's going to look like at wide receiver. And now 3 more elements to your team and pillars with George Kittle, Brock Purdy, and Fred Warner. I love what they're doing as far as making sure that they have this thing mapped out. Now they understand how they can spend and build a team around Brock Purdy and Fred Warner, an offense around Brock, a defense around Fred over the next 4 to 5 years. This is phenomenal. And Josh says this is perfect. Fred embodies what our team should be. 100%. If you were going to put a poster up of a player that embodies the 49ers way, it is Fred Warner. But it's actually Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Brock Purdy. They symbolize what this 49ers team is going to look like over the next 5 years, the next incarnation of the 49ers. They had one that went into the 2019 team. That one was far different in 2023. Well, now the next set of individuals. Now, some of these names are the same, right? George Kittle and Fred both were there in 2019 as young players. And in 2023, now they're kind of bridging the gap. But there's going to be a lot of new players coming in as well. And Monkey Boy says this, with our run stoppers drafted, Fred is going to shine cleaning up the run game and doing his thing in the pass game. It's going to make it extremely more obvious how good Fred Warner is once you get Alfred Collins and CJ West up to speed. Those two individuals are going to be able to eat double teams and not give up vertical ground. That was one of the problems with the duo block, is they go vertical with those guys and get a vertical push and push right into the linebackers. That makes Fred Warner have to navigate through traffic. It's not easy. When you get these big hosses up front that are going to be able to not just penetrate, but also reset the line of scrimmage or set the line of scrimmage and not allow that push, that's going to allow Fred Warner, Nick Barton, D. Winters, whoever the linebackers are, Fred, we know, to be able to roam free and make plays. There's also going to be smaller holes, which is going to make it easier to tackle. You're right. That was a huge addition that's going to help Fred Warner. This is going to make Fred Warner's days a lot easier in San Francisco. That was well said, Monkey Boy, because those were big portions. And what's up to Spidey Danger in the house? Says, go Niners, go Ant. Really appreciate it. This from my guy, John. He says, what's up at Coach Ant, though? Does this mean Fred will make the 10-year wall? It does. Fred Warner will now be a 10-year 49er. So George Kittle, Fred Warner, those guys are set under contract to be 10-year 49ers. That's a huge thing within the building. And I think this was necessary because these are two guys that are homegrown. George Kittle, a 5th-round pick. Fred Warner, a 3rd-round pick. These two need to retire San Francisco 49ers. These are everything you want. These guys were made of the right stuff, as John Lynch would say. These are cornerstones. These are pillars. And now it's important that they go up on that wall eventually as 10-year 49ers. These are staples of the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era. And we're talking about what they're going to do when they retire. But what about what they're going to do right now? Because Fred Warner is still playing. In fact, the first 4 games of the season before the injury, he might have been playing the best football he's ever played in his entire career. So it's not like we've got a descending player. We've got an ascending player. And that is hard to say about a player that's literally nicknamed All-Pro Fred. How do you get more All-Pro? I don't know. Fred Warner is the best linebacker in football. There's going to be other players that have better seasons. There's not going to be players that are better play in and play out consistently over time than Fred Warner. So I love this signing. It was fantastic. And Eric, what's up? Eric says, yup, the 49ers are signing all their great players and Brock Purdy. It was necessary. And, we had question marks about they go through free agency. They're very strategic, right? They only sign depth pieces, special teams pieces, a lot of safeties. They don't spend on certain areas. They let go of Malik Collins. They let go of Leonard Floyd. And everyone's like, ooh, what's going on? Well, here's what's going on. They needed money to be able to set up the next wave of this 49ers football team. And part of that was getting George Kittle, Brock Purdy, and Fred Warner under new contracts that now they can build around. And the way that they drafted, the aggressive style they drafted, you can tell they were going to build this team around Fred. Now, Fred Warner is an athletic linebacker, one of the best. But they're putting extreme athlete linebackers around him. Nick Martin, D. Winters. And if you're going to have undersized athletic linebackers playing linebacker, you need big individuals up front. Alfred Collins, CJ West, Evan Anderson. This is what you do. You go get a Mikael Williams and Nick Bosa to set the edge. These guys are built, right? They're building a D line around Nick Bosa, but building a front around Fred Warner. Now you know how to build. You lock guys in. And I love the way they're going about it. And it's huge. It's exactly what you have to do. And, this is what Chris McNiner says. Chris Mr. Niner says 49ers core are signed. They are, right? I mean, besides this, who are the core players that are left to sign? GC's in chat saying Lenoir's locked up. There's really not. When you look at this roster, there's no one right now that is a core player that isn't under contract for at least the next 2 seasons, right? Trent Williams is under contract for 2 years. You can't sign Dominic Pooney to a new deal. He's got 3 years left on his deal. So he would be the next core player you would consider signing, on this team. Your other guys that are going to be core players, they're all young guys. They're all rookies. Mikael Williams, you have for 5 years. Alfred Collins and CJ West, you have for the next 4. You look at the safety position. You have Malik Mustafa, who I do believe will be a core player over the next couple of years. You've got him under contract for the next 3 years. There isn't really a position now. They haven't addressed a core player. Now it's about developing these young guys to become those guys. It's about developing Renardo Green to be the next Deommodore Lenoir. Deommodore Lenoir stepping into that Charvarius Ward role where he's got to be the number 1 guy. And Renardo Green's job is to become the next Demo, the next big thing at cornerback. That's his job. Upton Stout, his job is to become a great player. Alfred Collins and those guys are to take over that interior defensive line. This is what you do when you're draft and develop. You reward those players who develop and become cornerstones of your team, and you try to develop the next wave of cornerstone. I love it, and that's what it says here, long-term anchors at every position. And I think that's one of the keys is making sure that you get it done consistently and that you have these guys. And Eric Schmidt says, stay healthy, Niners. And I think that's an important element to every season is you got to stay healthy. The good thing is, yes, George Kittle gets nicked up sometimes, but he primarily stays healthy. He plays, 14 to 15 games a season, which I think is a good number for the style at which he plays. He takes care of his body. Fred Warner doesn't miss games. 1 game missed in his entire career. I mean, that is just electric. The things that he's able to do as far as helping this football team. He's 28 years old. He's appeared in 115 games in 7 seasons. All of them starts. 897 tackles, 36 for a loss, 30 quarterback hits, 10 sacks, 53 passes defended, 10 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and 15 forced fumbles. Fred is just different. He's just different, and it's great. Eric says Kittle and Warner are arguably the best in the league at their positions, and Brock is certainly a quarterback. No debating that. Yeah, I think Brock is not the best at his position, right? But he's still a young player, and we want to see what he can develop into. But he got paid for sure, just like you said, Eric. He's getting paid to be, a top 10 quarterback, and that's what he is. But the other two, Fred Warner and George Kittle, are absolutely the best at their position, and the 49ers did a great job locking him up. Fred Warner, who knows what that would have looked like 2 years from now, right? When he goes to hit, free agency, how much would they have had to pay him? $25 million a year? Go ahead and lock it up now. That money is going to seem a lot better in a couple years. Spend the money now and not so much later. Now, one of the things to remember too, because his contract, the cap hit was close to $29 million, there's a likelihood the 49ers just freed up more cap space. Now, we'll see what happens when the details come out, but there's a chance the 49ers could have freed up, $8 to $10 million this season, making them once again over $50 million in cap space as they continue to free up cap. What are they going to do? Roll it over to next year potentially and hit it big. Maybe they have a signing or two to be able to go. It's crazy. It's crazy. And, we got this right here from Cannell. It says, all we draft is Hall of Fame linebackers. Right? I mean, at this point, we have had a run of linebackers that's pretty darn good. And, I don't know if Dre is going to be able to get to the Hall of Fame. He hasn't won any All-Pros. He hasn't really been in Pro Bowl. I think we believe he's a great player. But when you look at the ones that they've hit on, Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis, Fred Warner, just over the last couple decades, 49ers have been absolutely fantastic when it comes to it. So I'm a huge fan of it. And, Mario says this, time to score that Warner jersey, 49er forever. I know some people, I was going to say little, I don't know what I was saying, but some people want to wait until those contracts, they become forever 49ers, and I've run the risk of buying jerseys and then the player moves on. I think it's always a smart move to kind of wait a little bit. But sometimes you don't. And I have a Fred Warner jersey. Fred Warner was, one of those guys that I'm just so big on what he can do. And so I have a Fred Warner jersey. I have a George Kittle jersey. I have a Brock Purdy jersey. I think that they could be lifetime 49ers. Now, with that being said, I also have a Jalen Hurd jersey. I had made a deal with everyone, there was listeners back then, that if Jalen Hurd, and I thought he was going to make the team, he did. And I said, if he makes the team, I'll buy a Jalen Hurd jersey. I did. Then he got cut like 3 weeks later. So, that's just how it works sometimes. So I understand for sure waiting to get the jerseys, but I'm glad you got it. So it's a good time to get a Fred Warner jersey. It's a good time to get a George Kittle jersey if you don't have one already. Chuck says, love what Niners have done this offseason. Main concern is injuries hit. Not sure about our depth. I think that is a realistic concern when you're talking 49ers is depth. They have drafted and added through depth this offseason. And some of it is going to require players stepping up. That is one of the keys, is going to be players that haven't stepped up, stepping up. And that's at a multitude of positions. Now, some of the players it's easier to project, right? A Bernardo Green, we saw him play really well last year. We expect him to step up. Malik Mustafa played really well. We expect him to step up when he gets back from injury. But there are plenty of question marks with some of the starters. Left guard, the safety opposite of Malik Mustafa, I think those are question marks. But the safety depth, what are you going to get from Marquis Siegel or Jason Pinnock or Richie Grant? Like, those are real question marks. So we have questions there. At cornerback, you got Trey Brown. What are you getting? Is he going to stay healthy? I think that's a legitimate question. Upton Stout, can he step up and play? I think Upton Stout is going to be a good player. And if you haven't watched, go watch. David Lombardi did an interview with Upton Stout's coach from Western Kentucky, and just go listen to it as a coach's conversation about Upton Stout. I think it's really interesting. And I thought that it was a great one. I happened to run across that one. So if you're looking for something else, like another content, it's a good one. It's about like a 15, 20-minute interview. I found it pretty entertaining, and I was listening to that. So go check that out if you have time. But you're right. There is depth questions along this 49ers team, and I look at the depth chart and, there's key positions. And I've been working on some videos that I'm going to come out where I talk about the depth charts of the 49ers. And you do look at places and there are positions of need. Like I think that there are positions where they need a lot of depth. It's not running back, right? Running back is pretty good. Quarterback has been a lot better this year. I think there's questions about wide receiver, but they have some guys who can step up. Offensively, interior offensive line seems pretty good. But what are you going to do at swing tackle? I think there's one position. A lot of young guys on the defensive line, a lot of young guys at defensive end, linebacker, the same thing. Do you need guys step up there? Cornerback, safety. Defense is where a lot of the questions are when it comes to depth. So I 100% agree with that statement. Is if the 49ers lose key players, it's going to be tough, right? If you lose George Kittle, your tight end position is going to be a problem. Anytime you lose an all-pro caliber player, it just makes it difficult. Whether that's Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Fred Warner. When you have these top guys and you pay them and they're on the field, you're sitting pretty. One of them get injured, you just can't possibly replace them. You can't. The next man up mentality, it's great, and the guys can come in and compete. But is it going to realistically be able to live up to expectation? No. Every once in a while it does, right? Every once in a while you have a guy that comes out of nowhere and gets it done. But I do think that is a concern. But this is one of the things that happens in the NFL, the influx of new talent. What is going to happen with your roster? You have to draft and develop. And the 49ers are putting a lot of weight into that draft and develop portion of their football team. And I like that they used 11 selections. You've got to bring in some young guys to compete, and I think they did that. And they need some of these guys to hit. Last year, we know that they got some. Ricky Pearsall, hit. Renardo Green, hit. Dominic Pooney, big hit. Malik Mustafa, hit. I think Isaac Garendo, whether he ends up being more than just a rotational piece, it doesn't matter. He's adding. He's a depth piece that's going to hit. Jacob Cowing, Tatum Bethune are the two guys that we are wondering if they're going to hit. That's going to be the next question for those guys. If they hit, well, that draft is out of this world. Now we've got to see what we get from this one. Now, if the 49ers have any sort of success like last year's draft and you get 4 or 5 of these players to hit, and I think a lot of people are pretty comfortable that these guys are going to hit, whether that's Mikael Williams, Alfred Collins, CJ West. Like if these dudes hit, especially along that defensive line, this 49ers team is going to answer a lot of questions. And then they're in the conversation to be even more than what they are right now. But right now, there's a lot of question marks. You're right. And I think there's question marks, especially with depth. But this is what you have to do if you're going to build a roster and have longevity. Sign your pillars, sign your core pieces, and then build around them and hope that you can develop those guys into it as well. And, this is something that I heard a lot with guys like, Harris Barton when he came into the 49ers organization in 1987 there was the transition going from those 81 and 84 Super Bowl teams into a new age that ended up winning Super Bowls in 88 and 89 there was changeover and young guys were asked to step up. That's where the 49ers are in, that transition. Now, they didn't get a Super Bowl in 19 or 23, but they're in the same state of transition where they still got a lot of the core pieces. They're still going to have a lot of those key guys, right? Joe Montana, Roger Craig, those guys were still on the team. And now you still got that with some of these guys. So it's interesting the way that it goes on. So here we go. We got Key say Niners are, again, one of the most cash spending teams. We need more spending on bargain free agents now. And there are some bargain free agents out there, whether that be linebackers or wide receivers or cornerbacks, safeties. There are positions the 49ers could go get key veterans if they wish to spend. And so, yeah, the non-spending cash narrative is gone because they've spent a lot of cash and it was on homegrown talent. And so I do believe that there's an opportunity. Let's see if they do it. We'll see what happens with the free agency. We know that they are willing to keep spending if it makes sense for their football team to make it a great football team. And I think they're building on momentum. And what's up to Callie? How's it going? Callie Young in the house says, Ant, what's up, big dog? Doing great now that the 49ers have locked up Fred Warner, one of my favorite players on the entire team. I think he's my favorite defensive player. I think that's easy to say that way. He's my wife's favorite player, and so he's phenomenal. Fred is one of the best. So I'm feeling pretty good about it right now. And Kenny talks about too bad he only played 2 years. I don't remember who exactly you're talking about with the 2 years. Callie says Fred will be important with the development of Nick Barton. Yes, Fred is going to be important with all the linebackers' development. And this is the part that you're hoping translates, right? Patrick Willis was very instrumental with Navarro Bowman. You talk about Hacksaw Reynolds. He was very instrumental in the development of Keenan Turner, but not just Keenan Turner, even guys like Ronnie Lott. It extends beyond the position when you look at the way that people prepared. And if you listen to any of the interviews that were done during the offseason, whether that was with the media, with John Chapman, whoever it was, one of the key things that almost every one of them said was, I can't wait to talk to Fred Warner. I can't wait to pick his brain. I can't wait to understand what he thinks about football. That is a leader in every sense of the word when players you haven't even met yet are ready to just learn from you. So Fred's influence is definitely, Callie, going to be with those young linebackers, Nick Martin, D. Winters, who have been learning from him. But it's going to extend beyond that. And you're going to get guys who are at other positions, Marquis Siegel and Upton Stout. These guys are also going to learn from Fred Warner. That's why it's so important to have these guys, the way that they attack, the attitudes. It's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. What's up to my guy Lou in the house? And Luke says this. Luke's been putting it out there, been telling Chapman that the ownership doesn't want to spin is a narrative he knew better than. This was about growth. And I think that there was a concern, right? Because a lot of people were looking at the way that it was not so much salary cap based, but cash based. And then there was the conversation about the 49ers selling 6% of the team. And we know that if you sell off equity, it generates cash flow. The 49ers definitely cut out cash, but I think that they went all in last year. And then they were making a decision. We are going to sign key elements. We're going to let other pieces go, right? Out goes Deebo Samuel. Out goes Leonard Floyd. Out goes Malik Collins. We've got to restructure this defense and this offense and build around pillars. And they decided we're going to build around Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Fred Warner, and potentially Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, and Brandon Ayuk. Those are the newest contracts. Oh, and I can't forget De'Amara Lenore. These are key elements that they've decided to build around. And I think that it's a great way to go. Now you just got to count on your draft and development. Your scouts have to get it right, and your coaches have to develop these guys. And if you get another draft class that hits like last year, and next thing you know, you look up and you have 11 between last year and this year, or 10 key contributors, then yeah, you put yourself right in a good situation. And, I think that's a good category to be in. And Luke says it was about youth and giving space for youth like it was when they began. Yeah, that was kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about the transition from the 1984 and 81 49ers to the 88, 89 and beyond 49ers was that transition, right? You had different players that were coming in. You were moving on from Eric Wright, and you were moving on from that, Carlton Williamson and those guys in the secondary, and you were going to, Don Griffin and Tim McKyer and moving on to those guys, and you were transitioning, from different offensive linemen, like, guys up front like Keith Fawnhorse, and now you're going to Harris Barton. You had to have an influx of talent, and this happens with every team that wants to have sustained growth and sustainability winning. And so, yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to bring in an influx of young talent. And if you hit, the 49ers hit in that 1986 draft, if you hit like you hit in 2024, I'm not saying it's on 86 level. No draft probably will ever. But if you hit like you did last year, you're going to walk away with 5 contributors at least. And with that being said, there's still time for a Jacob Cowing and a Tatum Bethune to be able to develop. And you start hitting double-digit contributors over 2 drafts, that's how you reinvigorate your roster. That's how you get depth, and that's how you get sustainability. So yeah, I like the way that they did it for sure. I'm a huge fan of it. And then we got, Eric says this, and this is a perfectly okay opinion to have. I like every contract except Purdy. And I think that there are going to be people that that disliked the Purdy contract. I liked it. I thought it was good, get the guy in, but you're allowed to feel however you feel about these contracts. That's one of the fun things, right? Is like you're allowed to, like it or dislike it. The one thing is, whether you like it or dislike it, we're all going to root for Brock Purdy. Now, if he lives up to expectations, we're all going to love this contract. So that's why we root for him. If he doesn't, well, then, people who had those concerns are going to be validated. And so I think everyone's hoping he plays good, but this was good news for the 49ers. You get Fred Warner on this contract, you bring him in. And so for anyone that just joined recently, the 49ers locked up Fred Warner on a 3-year extension for $63 million that is going to pay him $56.7 million guaranteed and keep him with the 49ers through 2029. It makes him the highest paid NFL linebacker, passing up Roquan Smith by $1 million per year. It also will lower his cap number in some capacity, we don't know, from $29.2 million to we'll find out. And once we know, it's definitely going to change the game a little bit. But yeah, I think that this was a good move for the 49ers, and they lock up another key pillar. And now the focus is OTAs. The focus is preparing for training camp, and then ultimately for the regular season with a schedule that sets up pretty nice. And I think that's something to remember when you're talking about this season, is they want to have no distractions. Everyone that got signed to a new extension showed up, and they got rewarded for doing so. And I love this new trend for the 49ers. Players show up, front office rewards them with new contracts. That creates positive momentum moving forward. And I love that about this team. Now, if you're looking for more content, I have all the breakdowns of the 49ers draft picks coming out over on Patreon. I think we're about one guy away from them all being broke down. That's available on Patreon if you like that. But please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.